than were previously known. Cardinal law have angered Voice of the Faithful all the more. The Cardinal is even considering declaring the Archdiocese of Boston bankrupt as a legal strategy to deal with the hundreds of pending lawsuits against him. And the Cardinal has not responded well to Voice of the Faithful. Earlier this year, he banned them from meeting on church property. Pressure from his priests forced him to lift the ban. However, he doesn't allow new groups of Voice of the Faithful to meet on church grounds. In a parish 25 miles from Boston, a Voice of the Faithful group had their ban lifted after Protestant churches in the town offered to accommodate them. Their parish priest, Father Paul Keyes, was fully behind his angry parishioners.
That's the thing that I think drives everybody crazy. There's so much secrecy and so much cover-up and mismanagement, and the use of public relations people and lawyers dictating what is being said rather than people, bishops and priests, just speaking from their heart. You always hear people say, I don't care what the Cardinal thinks. My question is, what would Jesus think about this whole terrible thing? How would he be dealing with the victims? Would he be refusing to see victims? Would he be banning the Voice of the Faithful, all these good people, from coming together on church property to talk and share with one another? And obviously the answer is Jesus wouldn't. But because of suits and legal complexities, the Cardinal at times is not as free to speak as Jesus would speak. And that just isolates him more and more and more.
So what do you think you should do?
Well, I think in the beginning of our problems, when it came out in January, there were a lot of people who were supporting the Cardinal staying in his position. But with more and more evidence coming forward over the last 10 months, I think there's an attitude amongst the lay people and a majority of priests now that maybe he would be better off to leave his position of authority here in Boston. Maybe he could stay and work with trying to talk to victims. One of the problems victims have is that no one wants to talk to them in authority. And they just want to have the Cardinal listen to them personally.
It would seem that the only group that was listening at the time was the Boston Globe. Through the courts, the Globe Spotlight team forced the diocese to release its files and made them public. Since January, the Globe's journalists have been closely following this story, and they have some interesting insights into who are Voice of the Faithful.
This is a group of the Church's most devout, and in most cases, from my experience, quite conservative Catholics who do not challenge the Church settled doctrine. What they want is a role. They're in the Church. They're not leaving the Church. Unlike their parents and grandparents who depended upon the Church for all knowledge, the lay people, many of them affluent suburban people, they're educated, they're lawyers, they're doctors. I mean, the fellow who heads it is a professor of management, and we're talking about concerns about the management of an archdiocese that, in the view of some people, would have trouble running a two-car funeral at this point.
Yes. My name is Maura Walsh, and I won't say the parish I'm from because there isn't a voice and there will not be a voice in that parish. That if we don't begin to...
Why are there so many Irish Americans in Voice of the Faithful?
Irish Catholics take their faith very seriously. We are very, very predominant in Boston. Years ago, it used to be no need to apply for a job if you're Irish. Not today. The Irish have really... In fact, I will tell you that the judge who allowed all of these records to be unsealed that had been hidden by the Cardinal, by the justice system, was Irish Catholic and happened to be a graduate of Newton College of the Sacred Heart, where I went to school. Thank God for Constance Sweeney and the Boston Globe, or we wouldn't be sitting here today.
I'm what you call a cradle Catholic. I parochial school, minor time in the seminary, and when I left the seminary, got right back into parochial school. very active in the parish, CCD teacher, lector, Eucharistic minister. Growing up in my household, that was how we were brought up. We were Catholic, and we were Catholic through and through. There was no option to miss Sunday Mass. It wasn't an option in our household. Sunday was a time for worship, and that's what it was. And I was just always active. I was always active.
John Vellante himself had been abused by a priest when he was 12 years old. He was in a junior seminary of the Stigmatine order of priests. When the scale of clerical abuse came out in the press, John felt that he could not remain silent any longer. He had stayed silent for 42 years.
When I told my story, the only thing I ever wanted was an apology and an acknowledgement that this happened. An apology to me and an apology to my mom. We tried for months and months to have that happen, and it didn't happen. Even though we told the author that a story would be published in the Boston Globe.
Nice sweater, buddy.
The paper, they did respond to us. How could you cause the families of the priests' names you mentioned so much pain? You should have kept it in your heart. That was the problem. Too many people did keep it in their hearts, and too many people did not speak out. We've tried since then to get a meeting, an acknowledgement. Nothing has happened. We've had 3 meetings canceled. So now a civil suit is the only way. If a civil suit will finally get them to the table and admit their guilt, admit that something like this happened, this is what we want.
So you're not about money?
No. From day one, we weren't looking for 1 penny, and we're still not looking for a penny. We're looking for acknowledgement and an apology.
Found the key?